Hey learners, now let's dive into class methods, the functions you create inside a class to make your object useful. They can print info, calculate values, or do any task. So let's understand everything about methods in Python classes with real-life examples. So in terms of OOPS or object-oriented programming, what is a method in Python? So a method is a function inside a class. It's used to perform actions using the data stored in an object. A method always takes self as the first parameter, which refers to the object that called the method. For example, we have a class called student, and here we have a constructor, def dash init. Then we expect a name and age. And in that constructor we can say self dot name equal name, then self dot age equal age. Then I can write def greet, and here I can print hi, I am self dot name and I am self dot age years old. Now we can create objects with that class. So I can write here s1 equal student. Let's say the student name is Gojo, age is 16. Now after that, let's call the method. So s1 dot greet. Now here greet is a method. So when I run the code, you'll see it prints hi, I am Gojo and I am 16 years old. Now this greet method and this self helps it access the data of the object that called it. Now in this greet method we just have this self parameter, means one parameter. Now let's take another example where we take more parameters in a method. So let me comment this and create a class called calculator. Here let's write def add. First of all, we have the self parameter, then we can have more parameters. As you can see, it's not a constructor, it's just a normal method inside a class. Then I can have A and B, and here we can just return A plus B. Okay, now I can write here C equal calculator. Now to create this C object, we don't have to pass anything because there is no constructor. That is not necessary. We can just create an object with just using that calculator class. Now here we can write the print statement and just write c.add to call the add method and just pass 10 and 5. Now if I run the code, you'll see it prints 15. So even though we pass only two numbers, 10 and 5, so we don't have to pass a self, because Python automatically sends the object as the first argument self. We just have to pass the later parameters which comes after the self parameter. This is why all methods must include self first. So this self parameter should be at first. You can't just put other parameters before self. That's not allowed. Okay? You must put self first as parameter inside the class methods. Now let me comment this as well, and let's see another example method using objects own data. For example, we have a class called circle, and here we write def underscore underscore init underscore underscore. Then after self we want another parameter called radius, and in this constructor we can say that self dot radius equal radius. Now let's create a function to calculate the area of the circle. So def area, and we just want to return 3.1416 into self dot radius into self dot radius. So did you noticed the difference here? We don't have radius as parameter in this function, but we have that in the constructor function. If you have any parameter in the constructor function, you can use that parameter value in every object with the help of this self. So with this self, we can access the radius of each object, the value what is passed while creating that object in this radius parameter. Okay, so here I can write c1 equal then circle, and we must provide the radius. And here if I write the print statement and just write c1 dot area, call the function and just run the code, you'll see it prints the area of the circle. So this area doesn't need extra input because radius is already stored in the object. So while we create the object c1, we pass 7 in the radius. So we say that self.radius equal that 7 means the passed radius. Then with the help of self, we can use the radius value in other methods as well, because we did this step in our constructor. So this is the real power of object-oriented programming. So now I think you understood better why do we use the self. It refers to the object calling the method, which is this one. Now what if you say that if I forgot to write the self, it will just throw error. You'll get a type error. Python expects it. If you run the code, you'll see it's a type error. Circle.area takes 0 positional arguments, but 1 was given. So you must give self parameter here because Python expects this. It's a must thing. Now you can ask, can methods call another methods? Yes, using self and then dot method name inside another method, we can use method inside a method. And let's see an example, a method calling another method. So let me comment this. Again, let's create a class called student. Now this time we have this constructor. We expect a name and marks. Then we write self dot name equal name. Then we write self dot marks equal marks. And let's write def grade. And in this method we can check if self dot marks is greater than or equal to 80, then we want to return string a plus. After that we write an elif statement. There we check if self dot marks greater or equal to 60, then we want to return just a. Now let's have the else part, and here we just want to return needs improvement. Okay, now it is a function or method. Now let's call this from another method. So let's define another method. So def show underscore result, and in this method let's write print then string formatting, and here we can write self dot name and grade is colon. Then we can call this method grade. So to call this method we can just write here self to indicate the method for the current object. So we write the self, and here we just call the grade method. So as you can see, we are calling a method of class from another method. So now let's create an object. So s1 equal student name, let's say Nobara, and marks is 85. And here I can write s1 dot show result. Now if I call this method show result, it will try to print Nobara's grade is, then it will automatically call the grade method here, and as Nobara's grade is 85, it will return a plus. So the ultimate output would be Nobara's grade is a plus. Okay, but if you give here 65 and run the code, you will see it prints Nobara's grade is A. So the key point here is, in a class, a method can call another method of that class. Now let's take a bit more complex example. So let me comment this. And let's say you are working for a bank system. So there, for a software, you create a class account. So in this account class we have a constructor, obviously, Then here we expect a name for the account holder, then a balance. And here we can write self dot name equal name, then self dot balance equal balance. Now we want to create method that changes object data. So for that we write def another method, and let's call this deposit. So every account holder deposits money in their account. So let's see how to handle that situation. So we have here the self parameter, then we can have an amount the user want to deposit. So after we get the amount, by the way, as you can see, this amount is not in the constructor. We are passing this amount in the deposit function. So we can't access amount by self.amount. Keep that in mind. That is not allowed. Okay? Because we are not sending amount in the constructor. So here, or an account holder deposits some amount, we want to update his balance. So here we can just write self.balance plus equal amount, means the new deposit amount. Okay? So as you can see, this method is changing balance, which is object data or attribute. Then we can create another method called show balance, and here we can print self dot name balance is self dot balance dollar. Now after that we can create an object called ec, and here we can just write the class name, and the account holder is, let's say, Satoru, and the balance is 1000 in the initial phase. Now here if I write the print statement and write ec dot show balance, and if I run the code, you will see it prints Satoru's balance is $1000. After that, let's say Satoru want to deposit some money, so ec dot deposit, and he wants to deposit $500. Now if I write here ec dot show balance again, okay, actually I have printed in the show balance method and I wrap that inside a print statement, so there would be no print statement here because it's tried to print this print statement as well as the returned data, but this method does not returns anything, so that's why it prints none. So remove the print statement and just write account dot show balance. If I run the code, you'll see it prints Satoru's balance is $1000. Then after depositing $500, it says Satoru's balance is $1500. So deposit method updates the object's own balance. So that's how class methods work in Python. They make your objects powerful and smart. That's all for now. See you in the next one.